Welcome back to part 2 of my chat with high-profile private eye Ken Gamble. Ken, I said at the start I wouldn't want you chasing me. And the more I've listened to your stories, if I do go missing, you can come looking for me.
Absolutely.
If I don't want to be missing, if I've been taken, I want you come in looking for me. But I've got to describe you like a dog with a bone on the cases that you work on. It's once you've got your teeth into them, you don't let go.
Yeah, and I think you have to when you're working for people that are paying you to do a job. You want to do the best you can.
Yeah. Well, it's an attribute, and I see it as a detective through my career in the New South Wales Police. You need that tenacity. Like, there's a lot of cases that it's like tracking an elephant through the snow, and everyone can solve them. It's the difficult ones. That's when your skills really come into play. And
Absolutely.
You've got to. And there's more setbacks and rewards sometimes, and the long protracted inquiries. But when I just want to talk about the attributes of a good investigator, whether it be a detective or a private eye. And there was a couple of quotes that I picked up when I was researching before I spoke to you, quoted by a very well-known private investigator, Ken Gamble. This is your quote, so don't be critical of it. But I just want you to talk what you mean by it. Experience counts for everything as an investigator. Sometimes we would wait for a day for a subject to move and then lose them in 30 seconds. I don't enjoy working on a case and not getting a successful result for a client. I've always been results driven.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Again, because you're paid to do a job, you want to do the best for your client, and there's a lot of patience involved in what we do, and I guess if you've got a determined personality, so someone that's very determined to get results, well, then you'll probably be good at this job. Because I hate failure. I hate spending a long time on something and not achieving the result or reaching the goal.
Yeah.
So I always strive to do my very best at whatever it was that I was looking into, and learning all the relevant skills that would make me better and better next time. Because there's been lots of failures. I mean, no one becomes good at what they do.
But you learn by your failures, or if you've got an open mind to it, you should.
That's how you learn. I think that without failures, we can't be successful, really.
Yeah. And staying ahead of the game, which is clearly what you've done throughout your career, because knowledge is power, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you have to evolve with the way the world evolves.
Yeah.
In this industry, it's a bit cutthroat as well. There's a lot of investigation agencies out there. A lot of people come in with very high credentials, thinking they're going to, take over the industry, and there's a lot of competition. I always wanted to stay ahead of all of that by doing things that would be in a niche area, which is what we've managed to do to this day.
Yeah. Another quote, and again we'll talk about this, but quoted from something that you've said. My ability to serve others and offer my skills to those who need these types of service has been a major driving force in my work. I love the feeling of getting results, whether it be catching a fraudster, solving a missing person case, or tracking an international fugitive. It's a quote from you. A couple of things there that clearly you do have empathy for the people you're working for. And Absolutely. It's almost like I've got this skills. I want to help you, and you're going in there helping people, and it's a double-edged sword. Quite often, I've been criticised for being passionate or taking it personal, but I say that's okay as long as you do it with perspective. What you've said there, what would you mean by that? Expanding on that.
Well, whatever I take on, I'm going to do my very best at.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, and it shows the diversity in what we do. As investigators, you can be doing a lot of very diverse things, and a lot of diverse cases, and whatever task or case I'm undertaking, I want to pursue that to the end, in order to get the appropriate results, and that's always the way I've been.
You've with the company that you've got now, IFW Global.
Yes, correct.
tell me about the skill sets of people that you've got in your company. We touched on it in the first part, but I just want to go into more detail. Like an investigation, what do you consider a good investigative team?
Yeah, well, we have a whole variety of people, and IFW Global is a private investigation agency, but also more of an international intelligence firm, a private intelligence firm, because the private intelligence business is a lot of work we do is intelligence based.
Yep.
Not always just gathering evidence. We do a lot of intelligence work. So, and we specialise in the field of cybercrime and in the field of large scale financial crime.
Yep.
Across the world, and also asset recovery for victims. So that type of skill set requires professionals with different skills, and everything from we've got cyber investigators that are trained cyber investigators with degrees in computer science or cyber security. We have a forensic team that does all the forensic type work, mainly internet forensics or website forensics. So that is getting in behind the digital trail, within websites, within even getting into the source code, the technical source code, and investigating the source code of a website.
And these type of people, which in a team 20 years ago you wouldn't think they'd be part of a private investigative team, but these could be the nerds, or these people that have grown up using computers, understand it, live it and breathe it. They're the type of people that you want on that.
And the in-house staff, of course, as a business, you have to have your administration people, your sales people, your financial people, your accounts, all of that. It's a business, so we have to have the team, the support team, but the technical team have a variety of different skills. We have a covert engagement team, and they covertly engage with people to track them.
And some of those people, they're risk takers by nature. They've got to, and I think we could have described you in your early days. Sometimes I don't care to know how you got that picture, but they've got to roll the dice sometimes.
Absolutely, and then we have our external teams who are our surveillance teams. They're the operatives in the field, and they can come from all backgrounds: military, former intelligence, former law enforcement. We've got an incredible array of ex-professionals who have worked in the investigative or intelligence or even security industry that have certain skill sets. We've used a lot of former special forces people to do operations in foreign countries, for example, like Borneo and Cambodia and Europe and the Middle East.
So there's a risk associated with it, the risk factor in some of those countries.
Absolutely, yeah. We've had clients who have had death threats and they're travelling to a very dangerous country. And we'll arm that client with all of the resources that he needs, and that might be, some former special forces guys who are now working in private security. And we'll put them in there because they've done this in Afghanistan or Iraq, and we always bring the appropriate skill set in to whatever the job may be. And our surveillance operations around the world have spread all over the planet, from the North Korean border to Africa, North Africa, all over Europe. We've done surveillance in, I've lost count of how many countries we've done covert work in. But in all those places, we need people, we need a driver. We need a local surveillance people. We need someone really knowledgeable about the area. We need someone in security to be looking after our backs when we're on those jobs. So walking into our office is no different to walking into any major law enforcement agency's cybercrime division and seeing a bunch of guys and girls on computers and pulling records, getting into databases, creating I2 charts on a big screen, examining data, doing data analysis. All of that high-tech stuff is a daily function for IFW Global. And it's a great. Only recently have we been able to get the team back together because of COVID. we were all working remotely, and it's difficult to do certain casework.
Yeah.
When everyone's remote.
It doesn't have that same synergy, does it?
No.
If you haven't got people bouncing ideas off each other.
No, that's it. And I like the idea of teamwork. I like when we're working on a case, I love everyone to be working on that case at the same time if possible. And I like collaborating as a team. And we've only just started to do that again, post-COVID. And it's exciting. I've already done my first trip to the Philippines, about to go back very soon.
Yep.
I've got operations coming up in a number of other Southeast Asian countries.
I think one of the, I mentioned it very briefly before, but one of the first times I became aware of the work that you've done was, it was a 60-minute story. There was a call centre in the Philippines where you went in with the crew and just showed that you could track people down. Now, these were the fraudsters that were they were multinational, but based in the Philippines, but targeting Australian.
Yeah, and that's been a common problem for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, prove to not only our law enforcement agencies here, but also the general public, that these people can be caught.
Yeah.
Because there's this illusion, and it's incorrect, that these people in foreign countries can never be found, and you'll never get your money back. That's the general. I've got lots of statements from serving police officers telling people that the money's gone, you'll never get it back. There's no point pursuing it. Well, that I think is just a lie. I mean, it's so wrong. We've taken tens of millions of dollars off foreign criminals.
Yeah.
By seizing their accounts, by tracking them. It is absolutely possible. And the reason I did that show is to show that it can be done. And if I can do it individually by myself, then I'm sure our law enforcement agencies could do the same thing.
I remember sitting there watching it, and I was embarrassed to be a police officer in that I'm thinking, we should be doing this. What are you doing? But we understand, and we've had this conversation that, police we're jurisdictional and it doesn't impact on us. But I do feel sorry for people that have been ripped off in elaborate frauds. And, these are con men targeting multiple people, and occasionally they'll get a hit. But that particular story that we're talking about, people are losing their life savings.
Absolutely, and it is the financial crime against mums and dads of Australia is the most devastating type of crime of all. Because
sorry to interrupt, but it was a cold call, wasn't it? They were just phoning people up and then talking them into investing.
And the only people they get on the hook are decent, hardworking, honest people. Because those honest people could never imagine that someone would pull off such an elaborate investment scam like that, and everything looks so real. They use fake names. They purport to be hotshot brokers, and you can understand why people get convinced. But targeting someone's financial savings, their superannuation. Is a horrible crime because you're robbing them of their dreams, everything they've saved for. We've had clients who have spent 30 years working, just retired, put their money into what they believed was a legitimate superannuation fund, or rolled it over into a super fund, and it's gone. It was a result of a fraud. It's gone in a matter of minutes or hours. The money's gone. And the worst part about these crimes is that there's no help from anyone. They've got nowhere to turn to.
Well, the amount of calls I get from people saying, look, we've got this fraud situation. This is since I've been out of the cops, but even when I was in the cops, and we've gone into the police station and said, oh, no, it's a civil matter. And I've looked at it and think, well, I don't really think it's a civil matter. There's been some criminality there, obtain a benefit by deception at the very least. But they're stuck. And then even if the police are engaged in it and follow it up, it's just for criminal process. It's not about retrieving the money.
Correct. That's right. And that's sad, really, because it should be all about seizing assets. These are criminals. They're organised criminal syndicates. Their assets should be frozen. it's quite easy for their assets to be frozen when governments get together.
Yeah.
But it's very hard in some Southeast Asian countries because there are police in these countries that don't want to work with Australians or Americans. It's all about relationships. So I always believe that the New South Wales Police and other state police should engage more with international partners to learn about what's going on outside of Australia and learn how these crime trends are growing. Because now, with the amount of cybercrime that's on the planet, and crypto crime hit $14 billion $14 billion of losses last year alone. That's recorded cases, grossly underestimated of what's really been lost.
Yeah.
The line between criminality and legitimacy is now so blurred that even law enforcement can't tell the difference. The average punter can't tell the difference between something that's a scam or something that's real. And that's the perfect crime.
Yeah.
If you have created an illusion, whether it's a crypto exchange or a trading platform or something that looks really, really legitimate, it's disguised. It's actually disguised to make a lot of money, looking because of its legitimacy. But in reality, it's operated by criminals, it's built by criminals, it's manipulated by criminals. And behind these websites are gangs of hundreds and hundreds, in one case in the Philippines, 1,000 people behind these websites, making up to $1 million per day in income.
And what you're saying and what you demonstrated on that case that was covered on the 60 Minutes is that they can be brought down, but there needs to be a will to do it.
There's got to be a will. There's got to be the resources to do it.
Yeah, well, that's true.
The relationships, foreign partners, all of that. And why can't we extradite these people? Why don't we extradite people that commit crimes against Australians?
Yeah.
This is a big issue. The Americans will extradite from anywhere in the world. I work with the Americans, the FBI, HSI. I work very closely with them. We've done recent arrests in the last 6 months in Cyprus and other countries. They extradite anyone that commits violations of US law.
What you've just said there makes me think that we're all getting these calls, these annoying calls, because we're a soft target. Because
the softest target in the world. We're on the top number one on the suckers list all over the world. I've been I've spoken to sources in Eastern Europe, in Africa, all over Southeast Asia. People that we've arrested. I've recorded interviews with people saying we go for Australia because Australia is the easiest place to make money.
Yeah.
Because number one, it's a very wealthy country. People have super. People have got money. Number two, nobody ever comes after us.
Yeah.
So
that's very concerning.
Very concerning, and I think we should adopt similar extradition laws. We probably have them if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, but we should be able to extradite these criminals that perpetrate a serious crime against an Australian from overseas. Doesn't matter where they are. They're using the internet. They're targeting an Australian. The Australian suffers massive financial loss. Yeah. Millions of dollars of losses. That criminal should be able to be extradited.
Well, it would definitely slow the trade down, I would imagine. Do law enforcement agencies, I know overseas law enforcement agencies have engaged you and work with you. Do you get the same response with Australian law enforcement agencies?
Sometimes.
Yep.
We've had very good working relationships with different police. Over the years, I've done lots of jobs with hand in hand with New South Wales Police.
Yep.
We've provided information that's resulted in arrests. Same with Queensland. All those boiler rooms that we busted about a decade ago on the Gold Coast, all of that intel came from me.
Right.
And my group. We had about 20 different raids done on the Gold Coast, all from intel that was passed on by myself as a result of my investigations. So we have a good working relationship. There are, it's an individual decision of any detective, as you would know, whether or not they want to work with an outside investigator or any outside person, full stop, doesn't matter what they are. But it's really an individual decision. It depends on the detectives involved, the nature of the case. Policing is a very secretive job. It's you're bound by a lot of strict procedures. You're bound by the secrecy of all the information that you carry, that you've got access to. So it's understandable that police will not want to open that up to anyone outside of their own unit or their own office or whatever. But in certain cases, particularly cases where families or individuals may retain the services of a professional, and that case involves criminality of some sort, then the police should, under normal circumstances, at least have an open mind or open their arms to anyone that's potentially able to come and provide information to them, which could result in prosecutions, arrests, even intelligence. And I've had a lot of experience working with good cops and bad cops.
Well, I think let's call the bad cops for what it is, the ones that if you came to me, if I was working on the investigation and you came to me and said, look, I've got this information, I would embrace that. And I think there's an arrogance if no, we're the police, you're private, we know what we're doing. There's an arrogance that sometimes can be a barrier to taking assistance. Like I'm listening to the way that you're approaching investigations. Shout out to police forces. Get you on the detectives course. Come down and explain what you've uncovered, because you've been exposed to crime across the globe, not That's just right. in the jurisdiction. So I think there's lessons that we should be taking from what you've learnt from the experience.
Yeah, so. That's right, and a lot of it is inexperience within the police. Yeah. You get young detectives who've been in the job for 5 years. Yeah, they haven't worked with external experts. They have no exposure. So someone like us comes and knocks on their door. Although I must admit, a lot of young detectives these days are highly motivated. To investigate frauds and other cases. We're seeing a shift. I'm seeing a shift now with local area commands putting detectives onto fraud cases. Whereas before they would turn them away.
Well, we've got to look at where fraud's going. Like, banks aren't being held up in the traditional sense of put a balaclava on and saw off a shotgun. But fraud is going to be organised crime. We've got to get ahead of the curve through law enforcement.
Absolutely. 10 years ago, there were patched outlaw motorcycle gangs running offices on the Gold Coast, doing frauds. This is all public information. It's all on the internet. That's just one example, and I could talk about a lot, but they're organised criminal groups, whether they're Asian organised crime, Middle Eastern organised crime, China, whatever.
The consequences are quite often less for them too if they get caught, because they don't get punished the way they would if they stuck a shotgun in someone's head.
Absolutely, exactly. It's a very high profit, low risk criminal enterprise, and all of these criminal groups, all organised crime groups from around the world, are looking at ways to make a lot of money with a very low risk. And cybercrime, crypto crime, financial crime of some sort, Ponzi schemes, initial public offerings of a new crypto coin, whatever it may be, is a way to make an enormous amount of money. And some of the characters that are behind some of these big organisations that are on the public face have well-known identities backing them. But behind the scenes of some of these big, crypto schemes that are launched, you see them come out all the time. You see them crashing all the time. Sometimes what's lurking behind these organisations is very well funded and well set up organised criminal groups from various parts of the world that are actually running it.
Well, I think it is something that we really need to, and I talk we, sometimes I say we, I'm still thinking as a police officer, that the changes, we need to stay ahead of it. We need to, and quite often the barrier could be someone like myself going, oh, you don't have to worry about that. I remember when Facebook first came in, I'm looking for someone and some young detective would walk in the office and go, I think they live here, there, and I'm thinking, how have you found this out? Oh, I just looked it up on Facebook, sir. Here, what's Facebook? That type of thing. But we've all got to change with the times.
Absolutely, and it's the reality is that all criminal activity requires funding. However that funding is raised will depend on the type of crimes, the type of criminals. But everyone in the criminal world wants to make money the easiest way.
Well, that's organised crime, whether it be bikie groups or other forms of organised crime. The whole thing is about making money.
About making money.
And, if they can't make money in drugs, if we crack down on drugs, where else can we make money? We go the fraud. And look at the punishment for drugs, commercial quantity drugs. You go to jail for a very long time, but you can rip people off with fraud. And, it's still thought of as a white-collar type crime. There's no real victims. It hasn't been violent. But you think how you would feel if you lost all your life savings, your superannuation, your retirement's just taken away from you, and that's what's happening to people.
Yeah, there's a general feeling that victims are to blame, for engaging in some investment scheme overseas, and that's the general feeling by police when a victim goes, I've been scammed out of this, and it's just that general sense of, well, why did they engage in this? There's obviously a risk. You haven't done due diligence. This is the type of thing.
I think you hit the nail on the head. The people that do fall for these schemes are the ones that have lived a decent life and don't see evil in everyone that they speak to.
Honest people.
I know my mum, without giving my mum's name or details away, she got a phone call from someone that, started, we need this details, and she provided it to them, and my sister and myself, the other brother, sorted some stuff out. But she said, but they were very nice.
Yeah,
and that's and I'm not critical of my mother. It's someone that she wouldn't expect that would be that evil that could go down that path, and they're the type of people that become victims to these.
And these crime groups that have developed call centres, and they understand that psychology now.
Yep.
That if someone's honest, and Australia, we have a good culture. It's a great country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hardworking, honest people in this country, and they're the perfect victims to go after because they trust people.
Yes. Yeah.
And so they use that psychology to cold call Australians and get them on the hook. And it's all about being nice. And even some of the victims, we got a lady at the moment. She's 80.
Yeah.
She's just lost her life savings, everything, and she was devastated.
Yeah.
And she just said, I still cannot believe. I thought this person that was calling from Europe with a heavy European accent was so nice to her, and helped her with all this crypto trading, and it was just so nice to her over a period of like 6 months.
Yeah, so that's a long plan.
But he's taken now $1 million of her money, so that 6 months relationship has cost her $1 million because he was just a fraudster. He wasn't who he said he was. He was getting her to trade on a platform that was fraudulent.
They're predators preying on the vulnerable. And,
it's a predator. It's a predator. That's exactly what they are. They're predators.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
All right. Talking fraudsters. I think we can say that. Peter Foster,
convicted fraudster.
Okay, we're on.
I think that's on record.
Okay, we're on safe ground. Yeah. Tell me about your dealings with him. First of all, how you became involved in investigating his activities and all the other things that played out, including the death threats.
Look, I've had a long history. 10 years, I guess. I've had a 10-year history with investigating Peter Foster. Originally, I got contracted by Nine Network, a current affair.
Just before you go on, Ken, how would people identify with Peter Foster? Because he pops up in so many things. What's his history that people, I'm sure you show a photo, everyone will know him. You mention the name, they'll know him. Where do we know him from?
Oh, he's Australia's greatest con man.
Yeah.
By far. He's been in the media for 30 years. He's been involved in a lot of scandals, particularly weight loss scandals.
Yeah.
Sensor Slim.
Cherie Blair. The Prime Minister's wife.
The Sherry Gate scandal. Yeah. He's a person who has made a criminal career out of defrauding people.
Yeah.
And that's how he makes his money, by fraud.
Yep.
By creating a dream that someone wants to buy into.
Yeah.
And that's how he's built his career. So he went from slimming products, which made millions in his earlier days.
Yeah.
He ended up moving across to sports betting, online sports betting.
Right.
What a perfect way to make money.
Yeah.
In a type of gambling operation where people that invest are taking a risk.
Yeah.
So he developed this sports betting company, this idea of running these sports betting scams using websites, and his first couple of attempts were pretty pathetic. The first one that he launched is the one that we uncovered, a company called Sportalist, which got shut down. It was exposed on a current affair.
Yep.
I was involved in investigating that.
Yep.
Linked it back to him.
So who engages?
So Channel 9.
Yeah. Okay.
A current affair. They were doing a story. In fact, I hooked up with Justin Armsden, who I have been working alongside now for a decade.
Yeah.
Justin was the investigative reporter. He was the bulldog from the media that was always chasing Peter Foster stories.
Yep.
So Justin was the one that engaged me initially. Justin's played a big part in all of my cases with Foster, which has now turned into an international podcast. But he engaged me initially.
If he didn't exist, you'd have to invent him.
That's it. Yes. And initially it was just me doing some basic investigations, and it wasn't until the Sports Betting Club case that I guess I was publicly exposed as being the one that had him arrested. He went on the run.
Yeah. He
did this big scam called Sports Trading Club. He made millions out of it. He scammed about 350 people around Australia altogether. About 165 of those people ended up engaging me and my company to try to get their money back from in the scam. But what had happened is he went on the run. He had a warrant out for his arrest. This is back in 2014. He was a fugitive. He had an Interpol red notice.
Yep.
He had failed to appear in the federal court in Brisbane, and a warrant of arrest was issued, and he was a fugitive, and no one could find him. And then a recording surfaced from a victim who had been scammed by Sports Trading Club.
Yeah.
And that voice recording was given to Channel 9, and someone had said, look, I believe this is Peter Foster. I heard that voice, and I said, it is definitely Peter Foster, using a fake name.
Right.
And what happened from there is I then was tasked with the job from Channel 9 to track him down. He's wanted, got a red notice. Police couldn't find him. So let's track down the man, this voice. And
without giving away methodology, but I know people will be wanting me to say, how did you track him down?
Look, very, very interesting story. And of course, there's things I can't. I tapped into some pretty powerful resources internationally in order to get a fix on his location. Let's just say that using resources offshore, not even in Australia.
Yeah.
Connections I had in the intelligence community, using various different methods to track him. I was able to put his family under surveillance. Where we really got the lucky break was putting surveillance on his mother because we knew that he had a close relationship with his mum.
Yeah.
And we knew that at some stage the mother would have to go and see him. And sure enough, one day, I think it was the third week that we were on the job, she gets picked up from her Paradise Point mansion in a black car with dark windows and gets driven down to Byron Bay.
Right.
Now, we already had him located, or what we call geolocated, electronically located. We already had him in this area because we had the phone number that he was using, the mobile number. So we knew that that mobile number was in that area somewhere within about a 1 kilometre radius. So we had the general location. But once we followed the vehicle that came, that picked up the mother, we knew at that point that we and that's one of those times where you cannot lose this car because we know it's going to take us straight to him.
Yeah.
And it did. It went into Magnolia Place in Ewansdale near Byron Bay. And of course, within a matter of hours, we're in the bushes with the army greens, and because it was sort of it was a semi-rural location. We went in there that night. We had a look around the house. We noticed there was infrared CCTV everywhere. There was lasers across the driveway. He had a big security setup. So we mapped out all the security and the cameras, and we looked at all of the countermeasures that he'd put in place.
Yep.
And then the next morning, we were lying out the back of the house in a certain location where there were no cameras pointing, and within an hour or something, he was walking out. Had a big bushy beard, long hair. He's overweight.
Yep.
I mean, but straight away I recognised him. I had another operative in the bush, recognised him as Peter Foster. Got in touch with Byron detectives, said, "We've got a job for you."
Yeah.
And of course they jumped all over it.
Yep.
And I think it was the next day they came out to do the arrest. We had a surveillance team in the bushes, and the Byron police came out. They drove in. The news crew, Justin Armsden's crew, he decided to run in first, which the police were very upset about.
Yeah.
But he ran in first with the film crew, round to the back of the house. Peter Foster sees him and runs out of the house, takes off up the side of the house along the back yard, and straight across into the neighbour's yard and runs smack into a barbed wire fence. Bang. And he's flat on his back. Cuts all over him. Yeah. He's down. 6 detectives jump on him. There's a huge wrestling match. He grabs the cop's gun, right. grabs the gun, won't let go of it. Struggling, the shirt's ripped off the detective. It's a real scene. I was standing there taking a film. I was filming it all on my iPhone. Yeah. So I got all the footage, all the arrest footage. The crew's running around the house because they thought he was in the house. But he was up in the bushes, and of course it was the most, dramatic arrest, rolling around in the dirt and, losing his shorts almost. It was pretty humiliating. Yeah. And then he got up and went to the house, drank water, and then all of a sudden comes the fake heart attack. I'm having a heart attack, I can't breathe, of course, so he gets taken away in an ambulance because he was very determined that he wasn't going to get taken away in a police car.
I've arrested quite a few of the fake heart attacks.
So he was off in the ambulance, and that was my first experience with him. And of course, I was interviewed on A Current Affair about the arrest and about the scam and so forth. And that then morphed into a very large investigation. Yep. We filed a class action in the Supreme Court of New South Wales against 12 defendants. We seized and froze almost $10 million in bank accounts overseas in the Cayman Islands, Hong Kong and Vanuatu.
It's a big scale, isn't it?
Yeah, we clawed all that money back, less a lot of expenses, a lot of legal fees. We had to get a litigation funder. The money was burned up. By the time it got back to the lawyers here, there was only a couple of $1 million left. Ultimately, we won the case. There was a judgment. against Foster, which still exists, but all the money got used up in legal fees. So it was a bittersweet ending for the victims who got nothing. No justice at all.
Yeah, that's a shame of it all, isn't it?
Yeah, no justice. So during the time when I was freezing all his bank accounts, he was in jail because he'd gone to prison, but he only served a year. He got 18 months, but he got 6 months off his sentence because he ratted on someone in prison in relation to a murder. It was the John Charden case. This is public.
Right.
It's in the newspapers. He essentially became a witness in that case.
Yeah.
And said he had information, became a police witness. So he did a deal, manipulated the system again.
Yeah.
Got 6 months off his sentence for testifying against John Charden. Never ended up testifying at all. Never saw the courtroom.
Yeah.
But he got his 6 months off. So he came out after a year, and I could just imagine that he would have straight away gone to log on to all these accounts, and all the money's gone. All the money's been taken. All the accounts are seized. And at that point, I knew, because I had sources, various different sources that were in his, not in his house, but I had sources that were very close to him.
In his circle.
In his circle,
yeah.
That's it. I had very good sources in his circle, and he was so devastated by the loss of that $10 million that he decided to start making plans to get me killed.
And those plans were, it's not just in his thinking about, he actually started.
He started taking active steps, and this has all been publicised.
Yep.
He started taking active steps. I was in the Philippines, living there.
Yep.
He started contacting criminal associates in the Philippines that were in the Philippines that were from Australia. They were Australians in the criminal world.
Yeah.
What he underestimated was that I also had a lot of connections in the criminal world, because in my job, I have a lot of sources, informants, confidential informants, people who cooperate.
And so it filtered back to you.
So it filtered back to me that he was making these arrangements. His voice, the calls got recorded.
Yeah.
Of him making the plans, shopping around. When can I get it done? All of this is recorded.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely adamant that he wanted me gone before Christmas of 2015.
He was going to give you a bonus, or give the perpetrator a bonus to get you done before Christmas.
Absolutely. There was I think an $80,000 bonus or a $100,000 bonus. I think it was $80,000 was the price.
Yeah.
But he put another $100,000 on it if it could be done before Christmas.
Right.
He was planning to have the money, sent to the Philippines somehow.
Yeah.
Probably organising for someone to carry it.
Yeah.
He was at that point in time highly motivated to have me knocked off, but I was one step ahead.
Yeah.
I was onto him within a matter of days. I was back on the Gold Coast. I had surveillance on him.
Yeah.
I liaised with the Gold Coast Police at that point in time. Unfortunately, they never charged him.
Right.
For the procuring a murder because of jurisdictional problems.
Okay.
Because of witness issues, because of the anti-wiretapping law in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Can't record conversations.
Yeah.
All of that. So there was all these problems with getting a prosecution, although the DPP or the public prosecutor in Brisbane was willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
They were going to run it. They were willing to give it a go, but there was just some jurisdictional problems that they thought might not be successful for the prosecution, even though they had these. I think the recordings themselves were very compelling, and can be identified by experts as his voice.
They were wondering whether they could get them
admissible. That was the concern, because they were illegally recorded in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So there was this kind of big legal fight about whether or not he can be prosecuted, and I was hoping that he would get charged, of course. But at that stage, he had already started a new scam.
Yeah.
Started setting up a new scam.
There's no shame in him, is there?
No. And he had, he had a lot of people, a lot of hangers-on.
Yeah.
A lot of people that would do things for him to this day.
Yeah.
That's why he's able to escape custody and hide, because he has people, a lot of old school criminal associates, not even criminals. Some of these people are not even criminals. They're normal people that have this desire to want to help him.
Yeah.
Because he's such a charming character. Everyone says he's such a charming character.
Got the charisma.
I've got the charisma,
Yeah.
and that's what a good con man is all about.
Yeah.
So he's he.
There was another part to it, because wasn't there a arrest at Port Douglas?
That was the third arrest.
Yeah.
He got arrested for the sports trading.
And you happened to be there again.
And the third time was Port Douglas, and he had been accused of being involved in this $1 million scam, and which I'm investigating, and that's before the court. So obviously that is one that I can't say too much about. But what I can talk about is the fact that he vanished from the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
I think he got wind of the fact that I was onto him. Unfortunately for him, the victim that he targeted, he stopped targeting Australian victims.
Yeah.
He targeted a guy in Greece.
Yeah.
So the guy in Greece just happened to be in Singapore visiting a friend and said, I've just lost $1 million. And, from this scam, and it's run by these people in Australia, and rah, rah, rah. Well, it just so happens that the guy sitting at the table in Singapore said, I know someone you could contact, this guy, this private investigator.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I get a phone call from the guy in Greece who was in Hong Kong at the time. He's a Greek-American ex-fighter pilot for the US Air Force. And I get this call, and he says, I've been caught up in this scam. And I said, what's the name of it? And he told me. And I said, wow, I know all about it. I know who's involved. He said, I've got voice recordings. I said, can you send me the voice recordings? So he sends the voice recordings, and
sure enough,
yeah, it's the man of mystery.
Okay.
So I realised at that point I've got him again, and then I pushed to to file complaints and put a brief together and so forth, and New South Wales Police, because there was a jurisdiction here because of the crypto that travelled through the local crypto exchange in Sydney. Yeah, that gave jurisdiction for an offence in New South Wales. Right, according to the law, anyway. But that subsequently failed ultimately. But the New South Wales Police were able to issue an arrest warrant for him. Yeah. And I was able to, once that arrest warrant was issued, I had already locked onto him, starting on the Gold Coast. Within a matter of days, I traced him to Port Douglas up in North Queensland. Yeah. He was planning to buy $1 million yacht to sail the seven seas. He was going to escape. Why not? Yeah. And I went up there, I bought an agent, one of my agents from South Australia up on the job, Agent X, who remains anonymous to this day. Yeah. And we staked him out day after day after day, and we followed him and followed him and followed him, learnt his patterns. We found his location where he's living. We saw him walking the dog on a daily basis. We started to map it all out. And then when the warrant of arrest was finally issued, I liaised with the Cairns Major Crime Squad. Yep. I went and had a meeting with them, talked about what my intentions were, talked about having media present, because that was a big issue that became the subject of a big internal investigation. Yeah, I can imagine. I told the detective that he actually asked me, are you going to have any cameras, or media? And I said, well, that depends on how you feel about that. If it's no problem, I would like to have media with me. If you oppose that, I'm not going to do anything to jeopardise the operation.
Yeah.
And he said, we don't care as long as you don't get in our way. As long as you stay out of the, we don't care, bring cameras, whatever. And that was what happened.
Yep.
So we then just went and planned the arrest day. I liaised closely with the detectives up there, and we knew his pattern. We had intelligence that he was armed with a handgun,
right,
which turned out to be absolutely accurate, but it was a replica.
Okay.
But he'd had a handgun. That was seized from the house by the police.
Yep.
And we planned the operation. We strategically planned how we would film the arrest, how we would do it in a way that didn't interfere with the police, where they would be situated. We kind of helped them to map it out, because we had a month of training.
Watching his
under our
patterns
belt,
and
watching the patterns.
Yep.
So we then moved in. Luckily, we got lucky on the day because my cameraman happened to be on one end of the beach. The way that he was walking, the 60 Minutes came from the back. We also had a drone in the air just to get a little bit of a three-dimensional view of the arrest, and everything just fell into place.
Yeah, and
my cameraman filmed the takedown.
Yeah,
actually, it was a camera woman, but filmed the takedown. The rest is history. We successfully arrested him.
Yep.
The police did. And I was present. The first time he'd ever spoken to me directly to my face. He looked up. He had his face in the sand, being handcuffed by these very fit detectives that jogged down the beach pretending to be joggers. And they crash-tackled him on the sand, thinking that he could be armed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's why they tackled him in that manner. Of course, he looks up and sees me and just says, "Ken Gamble."
I don't think he said it like a term of endearment.
No. It was, I think at that point, the realisation that I was not going to go away set in, and we were all over him, all over everything he was doing.
But you do need that type of tenacity to go after people sometimes.
Absolutely.
And taking it back, where say about making it personal or too much passion, you can do it. You've got to have perspective, and you were engaged to find him. I think you've described or you've been described as a gun for hire in the type of work that you do. And that's not saying it in a nasty sense or a dramatic sense, but that's your job. People are paying you to find out.
Paying me to find someone, paying me to track their location, to assist the police to arrest someone.
Yeah.
We do it all the time.
Yeah. I good on you for doing it, because if it's not done, the other people will suffer.
Yeah, well, people suffered as a result of that because certain detectives were suspended and have now stepped out of the police force because of that arrest. That's unfortunate.
I didn't realise that. That's a shame. But,
there was a major internal investigation because why were the media present at this arrest? So that sort of thing is. Yeah.
Let me tell you, Ken, they won't be the first police to leave the police force in, let's say, controversial circumstances.
Exactly, that's right.
It's a nature of it.
Yeah.
Another one, and I'm just mindful of how many things we've got to talk about, and we're not going to get through them all, but another one I want to talk about is the Belgium backpacker up at Byron Bay, because I think, again, just people that mightn't be aware of it, how old was he?
How old was Theo?
Theo. So
18.
18. And
18.
He'd been out for a night at Byron Bay.
Yeah.
And he was asked to leave a nightclub and left, and that's the last he's been.
Yeah, he
since.
Just arrived in town a couple of days earlier. He'd been out earlier that night with another Belgian friend that he'd met at the Backpackers. Went out to the Cheeky Monkey nightclub. During the evening, he was asked to leave. He had a few beers, having a great time. The bar staff thought he was intoxicated, so they asked him to leave the club. So he's basically booted out.
Yeah.
He then wandered off. He was on his phone, wandered off and never seen again. He went down to a location around the corner, down near some cricket nets. He stayed there for 6 minutes. That all later came out with his GPS on his phone. He left a trail, a very detailed trail of what he did. He walked down through a park, up through the back streets and across down in this very dark and ominous area between the Byron Bay Township and Tallow Beach.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go down there at night.
Yeah, I know I know the area well. It's not the type of place that you would go to.
No, and he was going pretty briskly. You know, he was walking because the speed of his walk was even recorded on the GPS. Yeah. So there was quite incredible tracking available, and he vanished. There was certain activities on his phone. About 1 a.m. Something happened, and as a result, there was no more activity on his phone, but his phone remained connected to the tower right through until early in the afternoon of the next day. Yeah. It was still pinging the tower in that location, general location.
Now, there's a thought, because there was a search, his body hasn't been located, and there was a thought that he fell into the water, basically. And that's why his body hasn't been recovered. That's concerning, and I say this from without knowing the intricate details of the investigation, but my belief was any time there's a suspicious disappearance or death, it should be treated as suspicious until it can be proven otherwise. I think some assumptions were made that that's what's happened to him, but your involvement, how did you become involved in it to start with?
So I was originally asked to comment on some Google data on the Lighthouse podcast, which the Australian newspaper was doing in relation to the case. And as a result of the comments that I made, I was asked to look into this data a little bit further. And I actually offered, I said, if there's anything I can do to help, I've had a lot of experience looking at Google data. We have geospatial consultants, we know a lot about data and how it works. So that I then got introduced to the family and I said, I'm happy to help out and look at this data. Yeah. Originally, that's how it started. And then when I started to look into the data and make all these discoveries and look at the line of inquiry that the police were going down, I became very concerned that they were on the wrong track, that the police were not on the right track. They hadn't even accessed this data initially. This was found by the family, this data. Yeah. So I contacted Byron Bay Detective. Well, before that, I offered to help the family pro bono. I said, look, I'm happy to help. Yeah. I didn't realise at that point the extent of what I'd be doing. Initially, I just said I'm happy to help out with whatever I can. I got a formal engagement letter from the parents in Belgium to be engaged. I made it very clear that I'm not going to charge anything. Yeah. I don't want to be seen to be commercially benefiting from a case like this.
Yeah, I understand
I said,
what you're saying.
I can't charge, but I will do everything I can to help. So I said, I'll do it pro bono. I'll do whatever I can to help. I'll use my resources, my team, and that's how it started. So once I had the letter from the parents, I contacted Byron detectives, and unfortunately they wouldn't meet with me. They didn't want to meet me because I'd spoken on the podcast, I suppose. At that stage, they were concerned about the growing media interest in this case. They, for whatever reason, rejected my invitation to have a meeting because at that point I was starting to gather some of my own information and data, and I already had some ideas on how we could fully investigate. I've investigated hundreds of missing persons cases. So I had a lot of ideas about how we could map together his last movements, ways and means that maybe even the police might not have even thought of, particularly with the digital evidence. But I was completely blocked from having the meeting. To this day, I've never met them.
Yeah, and look, I'll make a comment here, and I don't want to be controversial. I don't know the details or the nature. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'll make this in a general comment that if I was heading up that investigation and someone with your skills and experience came to me, I would meet with you and get the information. And I don't understand why they wouldn't.
We don't understand it either.
Yeah. And I know you're burnt because I don't, my relationship's destroyed. I don't want to destroy your relationship with the police. I think you're genuine in that trying to help, and that's what everyone's focus should be on.
Well, I think what it sends a bad message to the family. I think that the bottom line, I'm a representative of the family. I've been officially appointed to act for the family. And if they reject a meeting with me, they're in fact rejecting the family trying to help. The family are trying to retain someone professionally to look in. We're not trying to tread on the police's toes. It's quite the opposite. We're actually wanting to work together in a collaborative way, because what we've demonstrated through decades of doing this type of work is that some of the most successful investigations have been as a result of collaboration.
100%.
And there's many, many, many instances of cases that have been solved because of members of the public coming forward, right?
I'm laughing because it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah. So why would you not open your arms up to anybody that comes to Byron Bay with certain skill sets?
Yes.
If you don't know anything about that person, look them up, do your homework, make a phone call, whatever. Find out who is this person that wants to meet, rather than take this approach of, no, we don't want to associate or mix or meet anybody outside of our office. And that has cast a dark shadow on this investigation from day one, to be honest. There's a lot of people unhappy about it. About the way in which there's been a recent coronial inquest. So it's not me. I don't have to say anything. I just listen to the inquest, and you'll hear all the criticism.
And why not take up those that offer to help, and some of the stuff, because I've seen what some of the data that you found, and it does call into question the theory that he's just fallen off the cliff.
Absolutely, there were other lines of inquiry that were very strong, and in fact the information that came, the anonymous information that came to light, which resulted in the program on Nine Network, was very compelling, very, very compelling information. But it was disregarded because the people that said this information had histories of drug use and criminal records. Well, I shouldn't have to tell any detective that, but drug users and criminals can witness a crime. Regardless of their credibility, that's a different issue. But they can still witness a very serious crime. And they should be given every benefit of the doubt.
And if they can receive, retain and relay, and then you can work out how much weight you place on that evidence when it's married up with all the other evidence.
Correct. Absolutely. So we went down this line of inquiry which opened up a can of worms, and we were told information by people connected to this individual that made this so-called confession. One of his relatives tells us some information. As a result of that information, we drive 70 kilometres away to Nimbin, to an abandoned house, and we make an unbelievable discovery of the belongings of a deceased person, who happens to have been found at Tallow Beach, the same location that Theo disappeared. So there was something really, really compelling about that information, and how it was obtained, and why did these people know this information and were able to lead us to that house. And we made this compelling find of all of the personal belongings of Thea Little, who was found deceased in Tallow Beach, in the exact area where Theo disappeared. Same area. Her death was not treated as suspicious. But there's a lot of people that would argue about that.
It's concerning, isn't it? And the impact that it has on the family. If the family doesn't have the confidence, and the community doesn't have the confidence that everything that can be done is being done, that's something that they carry with for the rest of their lives, the frustration.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
What I know about homicide investigations or missing persons, sometimes you can't get the successful outcome, but you give the family some comfort if you know everything that can be done has been done, and the frustration that they must feel with engaging you and then not communicating, not handing over all your information or talking about that. But I hope, and just listening to you, and it makes me realise how many things are changing in the world of crime, and you've got to stay on top of it. And hopefully the police are going to embrace it and understand the need to change our thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that organisations like us, like IFW Global, we're out there doing this on a global basis. We're not just here. New South Wales, a fraction of our work is based here, even in Australia now. So we're collecting intelligence, an enormous amount of intelligence. I mean, we share our intel with the FBI, who are blown away at the amount of intelligence that we've collected over the past decade in relation to large-scale financial crime groups all over the planet, from South Africa to Bulgaria to Ukraine to Turkey. We've got all the groups identified. We know who the kingpins are, the masterminds. We know the rego plates of their cars. We know what private jets they're flying. This is high-level intel that nobody has except us. Yeah. So why wouldn't some of these agencies reach out and want to know that? I know that the FBI do, and I know that Homeland Security investigations do. Some of these bigger agencies that take it seriously are craving for that sort of intel, and yet we have an enormous amount of that that we have shared intel with our law enforcement here, but there's not a strong sense of the importance of that.
Yeah, it's almost like, it sounds childish, but it's like a demarcation dispute. No, this is our world. You stay out of it. But it's not as if you're a fly-by-night group. Like you've, and I've run out of time, but with Sri Lanka, you met with the Sri Lankan president on 2 occasions, but that was helped investigate a fraud that was costing billions of dollars.
Yeah, look, the embezzlement of $5+ billion by the former president, the allegations of the president embezzling the money, and we got engaged by the financial crime police to consult to the Sri Lankan government through my intelligence sources in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
We got an introduction, went to Singapore, had a meeting with the chief of the Financial Crimes Police, then ended up in Colombo, and then meeting with President Sirisena face to face. And that was one of those moments where you pinch yourself and you think, wow, we'll talk about one extreme to the other. We went to the presidential palace. We met him on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah.
This is around 2017, and we were able to have a 1-hour face-to-face discussion about the methodology that we were intending to use to track assets all across the world.
Wow.
That was what it was about.
Okay.
Asset recovery, asset discovery, and we gave what we thought needed to happen in order to track all these assets, and how we were going to freeze assets, and what lawyers we're going to use in Hong Kong. And, we gave them an insight about it. And we started the investigation.
Yeah.
We spent a number of days in workshops and ended up having a second meeting with the president. Funny enough, at the end of the meeting, I was thinking, I want to pull my camera out and ask for a photo, but that's really uncool because I'm sitting with the president.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, he turns around and pulls the camera and he says, "Come on, let's get a photo."
Now that's cool.
And here we are. We get our photo with President Sirisena.
Yeah.
Which was kind of pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it was a nice memento to take back home.
Yeah.
But that just shows the enormous reach of someone in our industry.
Yeah.
It's not the first government that I've worked for, foreign government. There are foreign governments that hire people like us to find assets, tax cheats, people who are cheating certain countries' tax systems and have gone overseas and hidden assets. They can't go through official channels to get that information.
Yeah.
They have to hire private professionals.
Yeah.
And there's a huge industry in that. So, our clients can go all the way to the top, which I find exciting. And it makes you feel great about what you do. That we can help, governments, not just people.
I do get the sense in talking to you, and I think it come across to the listeners listening to the podcast that you do like to help. It's not all about this is my business, this is what I do. There's things that you're reaching out to help because you've got all this knowledge and experience and skills, access to things that traditional law enforcement doesn't have. And you're willing to help. So, hopefully we do start to look at things a little bit differently. As the face of crime is starting to change, maybe the way we fight it, we've got to change that as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And that'll just, it'll continue to evolve as we move forward in the technological age.
Yeah.
We are fighting a new enemy when it comes to crime.
Yeah.
And of course, the online aspect of crime has now taken over.
So we might have, it's not like passing a dud check that you walk into the local police station.
Those days are gone.
Yeah, they were simpler days, weren't they?
Absolutely.
They were definitely, and when you look at how much it's changed, and there's a quote, and I'll just rush it through, but another quote that you've said about the changing face of crime. So, and this is talking about your career. When you started, there was no internet, no mobile phones, very little tracking technology, and not even much CCTV around the community. I've witnessed a global transformation during my career from one extreme to another: the growth of digital media, the expansion of the internet, an explosion in technology-based crimes, incredible tracking technology, facial recognition, and now the prolific growth of cryptocurrency scams across the world. Just about sums up.
That sums it all up. I mean, I've been lucky enough to live in a 30-year period of time where there's been the most dramatic change in the history of the world.
Yeah.
The most dramatic change from one extreme, from the old way to the new way. It's all occurred in the past 30 years.
Yeah.
And it'll continue to change, but not as dramatically as it has in the last 30 years. So it was a great time for me to serve in my industry.
Yeah. Well, you have served, and quite often when I have a police officer here, I thank them for their service and service to the community. And I have no problem saying that to you, even you're running a private business, but you have served the community and you're making a difference. So as a law enforcement agent, officer, whatever you want to call yourself, you can't hope for doing anything more than helping people that have been wronged.
That's it. And if I leave any legacy in the world, I want to be able to change the way that particularly financial crime is investigated. And if I can save thousands or even millions of people from financial ruin, I think that's a good legacy.
That's a great legacy. Now, you've also got to write a book at some stage, because I think you've got some absolutely amazing stories, and you've told me a couple of cases you worked off record, and it sounds like if it didn't happen, you'd have to invent it. So
that's right. Yeah. It's time. It takes time to write a book.
It does. I'm sure at the end of your career, you might be able to sit down and put some time into it. But a fascinating career that you've had, and I know how busy you are. Always busy. And thanks for making the time to come on I Catch Killers.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
Cheers, Ken.
Thank you.